Good morning, everyone. How are you? This is, gosh, the first day of June in the year of our Lord 2023. Okay, so it's 6 months in. I'm still going to call this the beginning of the year in terms of everybody making plans to do things differently. I'm started back in January to do some things differently in my life, and I'm really liking it. And I find that the more I write the things down that I want to do, and then, by writing them down, I figure out how I'm going to get them done. My life is a whole lot more productive. It's also a good way to keep your juices going when you're like going through something. If you have something on your list to do, it helps you to put everything into perspective and get done what you really want to get done. And I'm saying that because there's so much going on with everybody's lives that if you don't concentrate, if you don't really concentrate on bringing good into your life, on bringing productive stuff, productive thoughts, productive um, projects into your life, you won't do it. But there's so much going on, and you just can't take it. It's almost overbearing. And so, while we look for justice and work for justice, we also have to look for and work for justice within ourselves. We have to rest. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to pay attention to ourselves so that we don't overload ourselves or put ourselves in a precarious mental, emotional, or physical situation. So that's very, very important. Um, so I'm just really glad. I'm just stunned though at the date June 1st. It seems like just yesterday it was January 1st. Now it's June 1st. So time waits for nobody. So if you've not started to do anything different in your life, I'm going to keep pushing it. I need for you to do that. The second thing I wanted to share with you is that even though I'm hoping that you're buying my book, Rest for the Justice Seeking Soul, I hope that you are also trying to make an effort to support Black booksellers. We need to support our own. We don't know what's going to happen politically. Everything is really so up in the air. We don't know what's going to happen, but we really do need to support each other. We need to respect and just respect and support each other. I keep thinking about the coach, like the Tommy Tuberville guy, all these Caucasian coaches that have coached our African American boys in football, and I'm thinking, then he's coming out as being so racist. I'm trying to figure out, what did you do? How did you deal with our young men? How did you do that? I don't know, but I think that we should be supporting our own. We should be supporting our own, and we should be lifting them up and striving for excellence for our people, because if we don't do it, nobody's going to do it. So I'm hoping that you'll consider that. I went to an independent bookseller last week, and it was just delightful. I didn't even know it existed. I looked it up, but there are Black booksellers all over the country, and I urge you to look into them and see if there's one that's near you or one that you think you would like that you could order from. Let's do that. Let Barnes and Noble, they're cool. They got enough money. Amazon sure the heck has enough money, but our independent Black book sellers don't have that kind of money, and they have really good material. So I'm hoping that you will do that. So this morning, I've been telling you that I've been reading to you from Rest for the Justice Seeking Soul, which is just 7790 meditations. But I continue to write meditations every week. I send them out on Tuesdays. They go out every Tuesday morning. And so what I have started doing is pulling some of the ones I've been sending out recently to read to you on Thursday morning. And my hope and prayer is that I can find a publisher to do a second volume. So this morning I'm holding on to this different thing that I'm doing. And forgive me for kind of swallowing a lot. I got a root canal the other day and it still hurts. So that's why I'm kind of struggling with talking and swallowing, but it'll be okay. So, the Tuesday meditation for this week was finding the ways out of the mentality of despair. Finding ways out of the mentality of despair. When we fight for justice or to improve and change our lives, but the issues against which we push keep coming up, like out of control weeds in a garden. If you do a gardening, you know how exasperating that is. If things keep coming up in our lives, like these out of control weeds in a garden, it can lead to what David Leeming, the biography of James Baldwin, calls a mentality of despair. Leeming used the phrase when sharing how poet County Cullen, who mentored James Baldwin when he was young and trying to find his way and his identity, pointed a way around the mentality of despair. That's a quote. Young Baldwin was feeling some despair, because he did not realize that it was okay for him to aspire to be an artist, a writer particularly, a person independent from his early decision to be a preacher and to be connected to the church, which he found problematic for a number of reasons. He was seeking, quote, real salvation, says Lemmy, but was not feeling like he was receiving it in the church, no matter how much he preached or prayed. Leeming says, quote, he at once cherished the safety of the church. He now valued his self-respect more. The boy preacher had to leave the church to save his soul, end quote. And that's a whole another sermon. That's a meditation in and of itself. That's a sermon that we're going to keep going. It is not necessary to leave the church to save one's soul, but it is absolutely necessary to displace and remove despair from our lives and replace those feelings with optimism and hope. Despair binds us and clogs up our spiritual pores. We cannot appreciate each new day because we cannot see the light that the new day gives. You have to have tasted despair to understand how far down it can take you. You get to a place where, in spite of having eyes, you cannot and do not see the beauty of holiness that is ever present everywhere. You cannot hear the music that comes from even the trees being caressed by the wind. You cannot see expressions of joy or hope or encouragement from others, nor can you sense, appreciate, and inhale friendships of people in your life. Despair, I'm going to personify it. Despair thinks it has the upper hand and gets it when we open the doors of our spirits too widely for it. And we do that when we have about given up. Despair likes that. Despair loves it when we throw spiritual temper tantrums and stomp away from all that would keep us above its choppy and angry waters. Despair makes us stop trying. But when we see a way out, that mentality takes a hit. It gloats when it thinks it has depleted our resolve of faith, but it is surprised and maybe disturbed when we, though down, find a way to jump right back into the fight. The mentality of despair is replaced with the audacity of hope, a phrase about which the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Jr. once preached, and it was a powerful, powerful sermon. When the audacity to hope or the audacity of hope kicks in, we have new attitudes and new courage. Howard Thurman recounts how a Black person involved in the fight to end segregation but meeting many defeats and barriers once went to an integrated restaurant to get a meal. He's tired. He's tired. I was tired of fighting for the basic stuff, but he wanted to understand what kind of progress they had made. And he needed to understand, and for all, himself and for all who had fought against integration, to understand the nature of the fight, the depth of the fight. So he went to this restaurant and was given a menu. It's a white restaurant. A little white waitress said, "Can I help you?" And she gave him the menu. So after he had read it carefully, he looked up at her and said, "Do you have any collard greens?" And I guess she looked at him quizzically and said, "No, well, no, sir." And he said, "Do you have any pig's feet or pigtails?" Again, she answered, "No, sir." Finally, he asked, "Do you have any mustard greens and cornbread?" And when she again answered no, he said to her, "You folks are not ready for integration," end quote. Had this unnamed Black person been caught in a mentality of despair, he might not have looked for what he needed, nor would he have said anything to the white waitress. The mentality of despair leads us to complacency and silence because we just don't want to experience rejection or pain or what we perceive as a failure one more time. We no longer look for a way out. We tie the mentality of despair to our very souls, and we sit in our misery. But when we look for a way out, or better yet, when we believe that there is a way out, making us continue to look for it, despair is put in its place. It no longer has a hold on us or over us. Young James Baldwin began to read all kinds of books that the church didn't want him to read. He began to go to plays and dared to get into conversations with people who challenged him to think deeper. He began to accept that he was different due to his homosexuality and wrestle with what it would mean for him in his life and work. He, in effect, put the mentality of despair to the periphery, kicked it to the curb of his life, and denied it center stage. The way to displace the mentality of despair is to see it and own it and challenge it and then move around it. It will always lurk around us, waiting for our most painful and vulnerable moments, but it is up to us to realize that it is a thing and that we need to respect that reality. But at the same time, always remember that there is always a way out. When we feel despair invading our spirits, our job is to push, to lean forward, and strain our eyes and ears to find that way out. Our job is to remember that trouble is temporary, and it is also the perfect experience to help us decide that the mentality of despair has no place in our lives, because it doesn't. Amen and amen. So that was my thought for this week, because I know that a lot of people, we have this after effects of COVID. People are still going through that. People are still mourning the loss of loved ones that they have experienced. Um, People are still having after effects from having been isolated for 2 years. Businesses are losing money. Some businesses are shutting down. Some churches are shutting down. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going on. The pandemic ended per se, but the effects of it did not end. And there is a lot of emotional and spiritual turmoil going on in the world. And so, if we are not careful, we can give in to that and give it too much power. And we don't want to do that. We want to own it and say it. We don't want to act like it doesn't exist, but we don't want to. Give it control over our lives. Nothing should have control over our lives except our relationship with God, the good God, the God who loves us all, not some bigoted God who has favorites, but the good God, the inclusive God, the loving God, the empowering God. That God, that's the God that we need and we lean on. So I'm hoping that this message of just hearing about the mentality of despair, maybe that will make you think about where you are in your life on this day as it pertains to that. And if it doesn't pertain to you today, good. But if you know somebody with who is dealing with it, talk to them. Talk to them. Maybe share this meditation with them and let them understand that it's a thing, and you can move it out of the way. It's a thing. It is not who you are. It is an experience that you really can move out of your way. So, that being said, I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, this first weekend of June. And I hope that you come back next week and bring about 4 or 5 friends with you. Just go and bring them. I'll welcome you. Just bring 4 or 5 more friends with you next week. And I will see you next week for Thursday morning, a reading from Rest for the Justice Seeking Soul. Take good care. Bye bye.